Video cut off. So, insofar as other bodies appear, it's still thought that's dividing and saying this is me and that's them, or this is one body and that's another body. In consciousness, it's all one, it's all connected, it's a single harmonious intelligence functioning seamlessly within itself. When thought appears and therefore divides and therefore analyzes and therefore, which is attempt to control, right? It's fear. Insofar as relationship is concerned, when it comes to survival process, thought is necessary. You see that, you know, arsenic and water are not the same thing, right? And insofar as you're going to start calling anything by name, you have to have labels, and therefore division, and all the rest of that. That's implied by thought, by necessity. But then we take thought and we try to move it into the realm of human relationship. We try to move it into the realm of perception, and that's not where thought belongs. Thought is a survival tool, period. But part of the process of thought is it tries to go beyond its limit, because thought is mechanical. It can't stop itself until it collapses in upon itself. And so the whole process of the human historical timeline has had to be exactly as it has been, because it's simply the consequence of thought running mechanically as it does. When consciousness is finally returned to the human being who has stepped into thought, and therefore used thought inappropriately to try to define relationship, which means to try to define oneself as anything other than consciousness, thought is not simply allowed to do its job, like the body. See, you don't fuss about the body, do you? That is to say, the heart, you take care of the body, you eat well, you exercise, obviously, but the brain, it does its functions. It keeps the organs running, it keeps the heart beating, the gut, all of the organs of the body keep themselves. The bones, the tendon, everything in the body keeps itself if you simply leave it alone and treat it right, treat it well, right? And so thought, which is also mechanical, if you simply let it be, if you simply let it do what it doesn't pose a problem if you simply leave it alone. But the minute you fall into the delusion that you are the thinker of the thoughts, that you are the controller, trying to control the controlled, then you enter into split-mindedness. That's a delusion. Consciousness is the doer. Consciousness is the doer of everything. But the minute that you imagine as you that is separate from consciousness, that is the one doing anything, that's the beginning of the lie. That's the beginning of the delusion. That's the beginning of the separation. And the minute you enter into that, you feel that it's you against the universe, you against nature, you against the other. And then you're living without love. You're living out of harmony. You're living without joy. And so when you see then that thought is what brings about division, separation, the appearance of another, right, who you then become afraid of because you don't know them and you don't know what they're going to do to you. Well, if you're in consciousness, you see that everything is you. What are you going to do to yourself? Nothing but support, because that's what consciousness does. It supports and nourishes everything. So when human beings are simply here in consciousness, there's nothing but fear. Fear is generated by thought. When there's simply consciousness, you know that everything is you and everything is supporting everything else to optimize its growth and expansion and evolution. That's simply what consciousness does. And insofar as any physical form builds up and then dies and falls apart, that's what it's supposed to do. The physical forms reach their peak, reach their apex, and after the apex they fall apart, but the very structural blueprint, the integral blueprint of that physical form is stored. It's a part of the intelligence of the Akash. It's a part of the intelligence of the source of creation. And so every physical form reaches its apex and it must crumble, but the blueprint of it is continuing to grow, and the next bit of physical form that then manifests to fulfill that will then take it up to a bit of a higher apex and then crumble and then more, you see? And so the whole evolution of the cosmos is like that, and it's mirrored in the evolution of the body, the human body, of the biological body, not just the human, but in all biological creatures. It's mirrored in the evolution of everything, of stars, of planets, galaxies, rivers, plants, insects, everything, right? Everything, there's a form, a biological form that comes. It has a certain apex that it can reach because as a physical form, it's a limitation. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so it has its apex, and after it reaches its apex, it begins to crumble and fall apart. But the blueprint, the intelligence, the learning that has happened through that form is forever. The learning is eternal. The form is temporal. And so the learning of the intelligence of the cosmos is happening through the utilization of form within the world of form. Because form has to appear within a timeline. That's what form is. Outside of form, there's just formlessness, which is pure raw energy that's omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Already knows everything. All of time from the beginning to the end is all encapsulated within formlessness. But then when form appears, there has to appear to be a sequence within a timeline. And that sequence looks like eternal learning about itself, the formless learning about itself through the form, but the formless in formlessness already knows itself entirely. And so the appearance of form as that which is learning is an illusion, but it's an absolutely necessary illusion. There's no other way for it to be. As long as there's formlessness, there shall be form. You see, even when there are temporary blips out, even when there's temporary just pure formlessness and nothing else, there could be no voice here, there could be no language here, there could be no brain here even talking about this without there being form. And when there is a total formlessness without any form going on whatsoever, there's nothing to talk about. It's just formlessness and its pure raw intelligence containing everything. And then form pops back in, and then it takes its evolutionary movement, and then here we are talking about it, right? As apparent separate beings, but actually in total conscious awareness that there is only I, there is only me, there is only God, there is only consciousness. And so there's the apparent dance. But the apparent dance, the apparent movement, which is an illusion, but it's a very solid illusion, right? You know, my finger's not going through my hand, right? It's a very solid, everything's holding up in a particular way because it needs to, because it goes with everything else that's appearing. But there's an awareness in consciousness that what's real and what's true and what's eternal and abiding is the formlessness itself, which is pure intelligence, which everything that is form is a manifestation of. And so the movement of form is a process of learning. And so, again, everything physical reaches its apex and then it crumbles. But the learning that has transpired, that has taken place through the physical movement of reaching the apex, is retained by the cosmos. It's integrated into it as it's happening. See, true learning is transformation on the go. It's not going, learn something, going, learn. No, it's a constant learning, which means constant transformation. And so as anything physical is biological or otherwise, is going through its process, coming to its apex, all of the component parts that are optimizing, everything physical in this cosmos is in a constant process of self-optimization. And once any physical form has achieved maximum optimization, given the possibility of the parametrical system within which it is, it then breaks down and decays to make room for a more advanced or a more a higher form, we would say a higher form or a more advanced form or a more streamlined physical form, which has contained in it all the learning of all previous forms in order for the learning to continue. And then the minute that's reached its apex, it breaks apart to make room for another more advanced form or a more optimized form. And where will all of it end? Well, it can only end in a total return to just blinding white light, you know? And so from which you could call nothingness in a way, the blinding white light and the dazzling darkness, it's the same thing. Because it's a single unified field, and that single unified field is here anyway. And so from nothing to nothing, everything goes. And even here in the midst of it, between the nothing, is still nothing. But it's a great appearance of something, you see? And so when you see it, it's not a denial of form, because here is form. The voice is form, the camera is, everything is form. But it's really formlessness pretending to be form. And so when you see it, it's never ending. It's never ending. It's never ending. You're like, what the fuck? I'm in this infinite sea of never ending, just what the fuck? I mean, what the fuck? You know, it's a never ending sea of awe. It's a never ending sea of wonder. It's a never ending sea, a never ending ocean of learning. It's a never ending ocean of love. And here we are, and we're in it. And you can't do anything about it no matter what. There's no way out. And why would you want to be out? But there's no out. There's no in either. Everything is in. Or you could say everything is out. Or you could say nothing is in and nothing is out. And it all means the same thing. And then you're aware of it. And you can simply be here with it in silence, because it is silence. And even with the words happening, and even with the body functioning, the silence is still present. And so physically, biologically, you can be here with no words, total silence, and be aware of everything. And that is the best way to be aware of everything, is in that silence. Because you allow yourself to simply be with it, without needing to try to explain it, or convey it, or rationalize it, or explain it, or analyze it. Because you can't analyze it, you can't rationalize it, you can't justify it, you can't explain it. It's self-justified. There's nothing other than it. Who is it going to explain itself to? What is consciousness going to explain itself to? Consciousness? There's no need. Consciousness doesn't need to explain itself to consciousness. It is itself. It gets itself wordlessly, silently, beautifully. And who is consciousness going to explain itself to ego? To thought? Thought can't get it. Ego can't get it. Doesn't want to get it. Because the minute that ego gets it, ego dissolves. And ego is trying, even though ego is wanting to dissolve, it also is wanting to keep itself up. That's the physics of thought. And so thought is anyway mechanical. The problem is that, see, consciousness animates thought. And when thought is identified with, when consciousness comes into contact with thought, and consciousness begins to identify with thought, to put it like that, it's a strange way of putting it. But when thought appears and attention goes to thought, and then what we call an identity is created. So identity is created when attention comes to thought, and attention must come to thought for the sake of the survival. So this is simply a part of the evolutionary process. This is a part of the learning that's taking place within consciousness as it is physically manifest, which it must be. It must come into physical manifestation, apparently. And so insofar as that must happen, there must be thought. And insofar as there must be thought and attention is consciousness, and so insofar as there must be attention must come to thought. And when attention comes to thought, identity is created within the field of thought. And that identity in thought, because it's mechanical in its nature, it just begins to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow out of control. But just like any garden, or even a forest, even though a forest and a jungle is wild, everything is together. And so the minute that any one aspect of the forest grows too unruly and out of control, that begins to choke out the complexity of the ecosystem appearing within the forest, the natural forces conspire to trim back the excess. And so nature is always trimming back the excess. Nature is always cutting back the excess in every way, in every way. In every way. It's like the neurons of the brain, in children that are born with an excess of neuronal branching and activity. Now people do medication, and it's not necessary. If you simply allow the child to use the body and to be properly active, what happens is those excess neurons, the ones that are not helpful, they end up getting, by the very forces of nature, cut and trimmed back anyway, naturally. And so nature has a way of correcting its own excesses. Obviously it has to, because nature doesn't waste. And so what is the growing as excess, one, it would choke everything else out. So nature trims that back and then uses that raw material to continue growing and expanding appropriately. And then when inappropriate excess begins to happen, that gets trimmed back, and then that gets recycled and used for actual harmonious expansion. And so everything is moving in that trajectory, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you see it or not, whether anyone's aware of it or not. It's a self-sustaining intelligence. It just happens. And so when you see it, you see, oh, there was never anything to worry about. There's nothing to worry about, because everything's taking place just as it needs to be. Everything is unfolding absolutely perfectly. And whenever there's excess, it will be corrected. And so you can simply sit with it and kick back and go, because everything is taking care of itself. The body's taking care of itself. Thought takes care of itself. Consciousness, everything takes care of itself. The planet spins. You don't have to spin it. The planets are all, you don't have to spin the planets. The galaxy is spiraling through the cosmos. You don't have to do that, right? The sun rises and sets. The moon circles the earth. The seasons change. The ground produces food, air is here. The brain even beats the heart for you and pumps the lungs. Now you can sit here and you can learn to consciously breathe, right? But you can also totally forget about breathing, and the breath still happens. And because of the way that the reproductive system in the human being is going, without even thinking about it, life continues in every way. And so life does not continue because of the conscious control of thought. Life is in perpetual self-continuity because life is consciousness and consciousness is life. And so when you see that there's absolutely no need to try to control life using thought because it takes care of itself, then there's a great surrendering. And in that great surrendering, the appropriate use of thought is seen, and then it's trimmed. The excess branches are trimmed. And in consciousness, and there's the apparent paradox, is that in the raw perception of consciousness, then the compulsive activity, which is brought about by thought, that comes down because you see that there's no need for it. And so much of the compulsive activity of human beings, which includes all the natural activity but amplified, right? Eating is natural, but thought, which is desire, emotion, takes it, amplifies it, projects it, creates a bunch of mythologies or creates a bunch of narratives about it, and then distrusts the system's intelligence to get food when it actually needs food. And so then overeating, eating the wrong foods, which is all poisoning the self, becomes part of the habit of thought, of conditioning, right? Same thing with anything else, with any other survival process, which when you simply trust it to take place, it takes place quite beautifully, quite naturally, without overdoing it or underdoing it. But the minute that thought gets involved trying to control the natural processes of life, it either tries to over-exaggerate some and under-exaggerate others, and then we live in this imbalance, and then we pass on those exaggerations as culture, as tradition, as philosophy, as so-called religion, right? And then we'll try to justify it, scientifically or philosophically or culturally or artistically. I mean, you see, all of that drama, that complex drama, which is all the projection, the invention of thought. And so that's thought out of control. That's thought not being in its lane. And so but this whole movement of thought outside of its lane, outside of its designated area, thought trying to inappropriately control what it can't control because of its nature as fear in the field of relationship, it had to take this route. It had to. It had to go insane. Thought had to go berserk because the violence of thought had to be perceived, must be perceived by consciousness. Otherwise, there's no appropriate handling of thought and no awareness of consciousness as pure consciousness. Because where there is form, there's thought, obviously. Because the order of operation, the order of evolution goes like this: consciousness, thought, body, perception, the sensory perception, objects of sensory perception, and desire for the objects of sensory perception, which is all projection of thought. So before thought there is consciousness, pure raw consciousness, which is pure intelligence, and then arises thought, and then arises the body, then arises form. So thought precedes form. Thought brings about form. Without thought, there's no form. Without memory, there's no form. All form is memory. And you can't say that this was here yesterday without memory. There's no awareness of form without memory, and memory itself is form carried through time, and memory is thought. So after consciousness comes thought. Thought arises from consciousness, and then from thought, which is division, which is naming, which is labeling, arise the 10,000 things, arise all of the divisions and all the forms. So don't think that See, it's very easy now to start getting into a lot of strangeness, and this is where a lot of people, and this can only ever be ego, where ego start, which is the still a thought form thinks, well, then I can use thought to control reality. And that was the mistake that we made at the beginning of so called civilization. Because then you take it too far. The limit is not observed. And when the limitation of thought is ignored, and thought does have a limitation by very fact of its being, it's physical, it has a limitation. And when thought tries to go beyond its own limitation, it can only cause disharmony because it's not in its proper place. And so it's not from thought that your true desire comes about. The desire of thought is the desire of conditioning. That's not your true desire. The true desire is the desire of the soul, which is to know itself, and that desire is already fulfilled. Your true self is already fulfilled within itself. It doesn't need to go anywhere or get anything to be fulfilled. It's already in a pure state of total self-fulfillment. And so that's the trap. That's the trap right there. Is that, if I manifest this or if I manifest that, then I'll be fulfilled, then I'll be happy, then that'll prove to me that God is real, that the soul exists, or that I really am a creator, and all of that, it's nonsense. It's garbage, because it keeps you trapped, it keeps you stuck in the same box that you're trying to use it to get out of. Because what you actually are is already self-fulfilled. The soul is already fulfilled in itself. It doesn't need anything. And so, you see, as long as there is a body, as long as there is the appearance of the manifest world at all in any way, there is thought. Naturally, thought goes with the manifest world. Thought goes with the body. Thought goes with the awareness of division, of separation, of boundary, of border. And as long as that appears, there will be the appearance of particulate desires, right? The desire for food, the desire for water, the desire for sex, the desire for clothes, whatever. But when you see it actually for what it is, then you see what is a genuine expression of the harmonious being, and what is an exaggeration of thought. And thought can over-exaggerate the importance of something, the need for something, the desire for something, or it can under-exaggerate it, deny it, suppress it, avoid it, evade it. And so that's the trap of thought. And so to try to use thought to correct thought is insane, because thought can really only exaggerate, either hyper-exaggerate or under-exaggerate. So to be with what is just the way it is means to be without exaggeration. And to be without exaggeration is to realize that no exaggeration is needed, neither over or under exaggeration, because the true self, the true beingness of self, the true suchness of self, the essence of self is the raw intelligence that is the source of everything, that must be doing exactly what it's doing and is altogether beyond any doing or any notion or any conception of doing. And so it is in charge of everything. There's no getting away from it. It's beyond gravity. It's beyond the strong and weak nuclear force. It's beyond electromagnetism. It's beyond that mysterious fifth force that, the physicists have yet to agree upon a name thereof, but it's, all the forces of nature are manifestations of it, but it is eternally beyond all form and beyond all force and beyond all structure and beyond all definition, and therefore beyond all comprehension of thought, because thought appears in it. Thought is smaller than it, always. No matter how big and complex of a thought form may be created, it will always be infinitely dwarfed by the eternal consciousness itself, which is the intelligent source of everything, including itself. And so, in any way, it doesn't need to be comprehended by thought. It can't be, but it doesn't need to be. because it's a much higher awareness than that. It's the ultimate fundamental awareness, and it's totally aware of itself, purely aware of itself, and you are that. And so to simply be in it as it is, you don't even need thought. Fuck thought. To hell with thought. Thought is laughed at. You laugh at thought. It's a distraction. It's a tool. It's a tool. Just like a hammer or a chisel or a screwdriver or a car. Like, it's a tool. It's a tool. It's a tool. It's a tool. Not to get you what you want. If you think that thought is going to get the soul what it wants, that's insane. Thought serves the physical body. And as long as there's a conception of this body, then that goes with an image, right? It goes with the divided self, with the ego, right? With the personality. And so it's not judging it, it's just seeing it clearly, what it is, seeing the mechanism. And so then there must be the awareness, and consciousness is already here aware of itself. It's simply thought has gone out of control. And thought being out of control, because it's mechanical and it does what it does. And so thought, which conditions the brain, then has the brain believing the programming, the mechanical conditioned nature of thought. And you see that thought conditions itself, right? Socially, religiously, traditionally, so-called scientifically, so-called artistically. It's all so conditioning. And consciousness is permanently, totally, irrevocably, absolutely unconditioned and unconditionable. And as consciousness being consciousness, it has the liberty, the freedom of knowing itself fully and of pretending not to know itself, of pretending not to be itself. Otherwise, it's just an undifferentiated, totally self-aware, unified field, but without any particular texture or depth or dimension, no time, because it's timeless, there's no time in it. And so in order for there to be an experience meaning something with a beginning, middle, and end, something of memory, something of form, something of time, of structure, something demarcatable, this experience versus this experience. In order for that to be, there has to be the appearance of time, which is the appearance of form, the appearance of sequence, and therefore of consequence, and therefore of cause and effect, and which is duality, and so binary. And so all of that has to appear within the field of consciousness, but you see it's all a projection. It's all a projection of light. It's a play of light and sound. It's smoke and mirror. It's light and sound. It's all coming out of consciousness and returning to it. And that's a part of thought. Thought is a part of that. And so, insofar as there is thought, thought is a tool. It's a part of the structuring that's here. Human beings use thought to build houses, to farm, to speak language, to build vehicles, right? Everything that human beings do that we call civilizational, right? Making clothing, everything. We use thought for that. And so obviously there's its place. Thought is the most basic tool of consciousness. And so the word manifesting, everything that is manifesting. If you're using the word manifestation as like manifest reality, manifest creation, the body is manifesting, all the elements are manifesting, the universe is manifesting, right? It's appearing, it's manifesting, appearing. But the word manifest literally means to make with the hands, to fix, to concretize with the hands, to solidify with the hands. And so that begins with reification, right? First, before the wheel was made, there was an image. Someone had the idea of the wheel, the image of the wheel in the mind. And then that was brought to reality with the hands. Hello, that's what manifest means. It means to bring to reality with the hands. And so, first there's the image, and then there's the crafting, right? And the word craft means power, by the way. Crafting, right? And so, first there's the seeing, and that's what human beings can do. Human beings can only use what's here, because that's what, so here's creation, right? And then here's the so-called individual human life, the individual human appearance. And the body has a beginning, and a middle and an end. And you come with nothing, you leave with nothing, right? Because from nothing to nothing we go. And so, in between, in the meantime, what are you doing, right? Insofar as movement is concerned, you're just moving something from one place to another. And you can gather together, a certain accumulation, and if there's a clear perception of physics, if there's a clear perception of the laws, not just the laws of the limitation, the laws of the physicality of manifestation, but an awareness of the laws of the eternal consciousness, then certain structures can be built which, serve purposes of great well-being and abundance and security of survival process, so that as many of us as possible can, be drunk on light, intoxicated on consciousness itself, and in that raw intelligence do everything we can to, well, celebrate the fact of what we are. And part of that celebration of being, which is the very exuberance of life itself, is ensuring a streamlined survival process for all beings, which means for all human beings, and doing it in such a way that it actually acts harmoniously with every other ecosystem on the planet, which is what every other creature does. Every creature on the earth, naturally, by simply living its most harmonious way of being, which it does naturally, supports every other life form on the planet in some way or another. Human beings being confused by thoughts, exaggerations, over-exaggerations, and under-exaggerations, we and we alone have that unique capacity to step out of harmony in our negligence, in our confusion, in our delusion. And so we naturally also then have the power to really just come into alignment with that and then watch what's happening. And what's happening is always a learning, a transformation. Every moment is learning, transformation, learning, transformation, learning, transformation. And so there's an apparent quickening happening all the time. But when you're simply here in awareness of the stillness that you are, you naturally and seamlessly surf that wave. And so there's nothing to be afraid of. You're just here as playfulness, as raw play itself. We are a manifestation of the playfulness, of the deep play of consciousness itself, which is what we are. And so consciousness is play. It's deep play, but that play can't happen in harmony with itself as long as thought is trying to control, as long as thought is believing that it's in control of anything, because that thought in that sense is simply anxiety. And so then it creates that shakiness and that quakiness. But that's been a necessary part of our evolution, because that's part of the learning and therefore the refinement of our system. You see? And so thought being astray, thought creating ego structures and then living out of those ego structures, that's a virus. Ego's a virus. But just like the immune system has to be exposed to viruses in order to fortify itself and therefore reach a higher apex of learning and therefore transformation for the sake of the totality of the whole, thought has done that. And so as terrible as all of the havoc and, hell that thought wreaks upon the planet, it's all been necessary for the sake of the system learning about itself, learning about thought. And when you learn about thought, then thought gets put in its proper place. And then there's a scene that there's absolutely no need to go around killing and destroying and brutalizing and conquering. There's nothing to conquer. You're messing with yourself. It's a sick game of self-destruction. And so when you see what a fucking joke the entirety of our civilizational movement up until this point has been, then we see what civilization actually is. And how it's actually not only the easiest and simplest thing, but it literally goes hand in hand with everything else. The human beings actually civilized creatures is in total harmony with the rest of the cosmos. There's no need to have civilizational structures which work in disharmony with the flow of nature at all. And in fact, when everything is allowed to move in seamless accord and flow with the natural concurrences of nature, then everything just optimizes. And this entire universe is a process of optimization. Evolution is a process of optimization. And so, where there's the perception of conflict, where there's the perception of opposition, there's confusion, there's thought trying to infiltrate and do what is not its proper job to do. And so, there may be an appearance of temporary conflict, but where there is conflict sustained, there is thought and memory trying to hold on to something. And in human language, we call that a grudge, or we call that a grievance, or we call that warfare, cultural strife, my culture versus your culture, my religion versus your religion, all of that. And it's seen in conscious awareness how absolutely vile and stupid that is. It's just, it doesn't actually, it in of itself doesn't actually lead anywhere. Right? And being caught in it, people think this is everything and this is it and this is my life. And it's like, no, not at all. That's just been a temporary passageway through the halls of learning so that you see how stupid it is. And to see that that's not the proper place of thought, that's not the proper place of the human being, it's not the proper function of being here. And it doesn't actually lend itself to anything in and of itself as a sustained, therefore stagnant way of being. It doesn't lead to anything but ruin and devastation, and absolutely no enjoyment of anything, and therefore no love, no peace, no harmony, no intelligence. So here we are, and there's no way of stopping it. There's no way of stopping it. And so to be in harmony with what is to be in alignment with eternal life, and to resist the harmony of what is, to resist awareness of what is, and therefore to resist learning, to resist growth, to resist transformation, is to surrender to stagnance. And that's like, rip me apart and turn me into particles, and then, remake something else out of me, which is going to happen anyway. So you see, it doesn't matter what you choose, you're going to be pulled into it anyway. It's unavoidable and inescapable. So if you choose to dance with the harmony of what is, you'll have a fantastic time, a fantastic experience. And if you choose to resist it, you're going to get dragged by it anyway. You don't get to resist it. You can pretend to resist it, and you can experience the pain and suffering of resisting it, but even if you resist it, it's still going to take you anyway. And so you don't get a choice here, and you get the appearance of choice, you get the illusion of choice, but there's deeply actually no choice. And and that's only frightening to ego, because ego wants to believe I have a choice. And it's like a little child throwing a tantrum. It's like, no, this is all going in one direction. You see? And you can't stop it, because it is you. It's what you are. So you pretending anyway that you don't want it to be what it is a lie. And that's what thought is. Thought has the capacity to lie. You have the capacity to pretend. You have the capacity to make stories. You have the capacity to lie to yourself, but deeply you tell the truth. What you want is harmony. What you want is love. What you want is peace. What you want is joy. What you want is ecstasy. That's what you want. And when you're in that, you're in harmony with everything, and not resisting the learning, not resisting the growing, not resisting the transformation, which is the inevitability of this cosmos anyway. It's the inevitability of consciousness. And so what you want is what this whole universe is anyway doing. And so, that's why it said, God is good. Because this consciousness is God. The universe is good. Life is good. It's whole. The word good means whole. And so saying anything about it becomes really redundant, because it speaks for itself. It is itself, speaking for itself by very virtue of its being. It is its own name. The universe is its own name. The light is its own name. The darkness, it is the source of creation, is its own name, the dark light, right? And it's right here. You can see it. And calling it light or calling it dark, we're not talking about the artificed so-called light or dark created by thought, created by imagination, created by imaging. The light and the dark created by thought are both dark. Dark in the sense of ignorant, fragmented, broken, violent. But the true light and the true dark, the true darkness, are one and the same. The true. Because that means uncorrupted, uncorruptible, pure consciousness. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered above the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Right? That darkness, the darkness upon the face of the deep, the darkness of the void, which is not evil, is not wicked, is not violent. It's just darkness. And when you actually see that darkness for yourself, it is light. It's the same thing as the light of the "let there be," and God said, "Let there be light." It's the same thing. That light and that darkness are one. They're not two. In language, you divide it. In narrative form, you have to say darkness, light, yin, yang. But in truth, it's one. And the appearance of violence in the human being, disharmony, corruption, lack of love, lack of peace, lack of joy, lack of harmony, all of that comes, as we just saw, from thought, which is division. And then from that, there's the false images of light that get created to cover things up, which is what human beings have done for the whole course of our history, committing incredible acts of violence toward one another, and then justifying it in the name of religion, justifying it in the name of God, right? Saying, "God told me to go kill all these people," and it's just because you want to kill him. It's greed. It's the greed of thought, right? But thought had to be able to go through all of that insanity in order for it to be corrected in its usability and its functionality as a tool. That's part of the immunological movement of the viruses created by thought. And so, just like everything else, just like animals hunting in nature and on and on and on, which human beings look at the cheetah chasing the deer and say, "Oh, how violent." But it's not, it is what it is. It's a part of the natural progression and the movement of things. It's not as if the deer is constantly freaked out and anxious about it. When the cheetah chases, the deer runs. If the cheetah gets it, it gets it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's done. Everything's back. You see? The cheetah doesn't sit there with an idea of, "I'm a cheetah and I hate those deer," and then build philosophies about being against the deer and then build bombs to go kill the deer. You see what I'm saying? It's not, and human beings being here and being human and being in harmony with everything naturally, we don't have to do that. All of our needs are taken care of naturally without a human being having to kill or destroy or hurt another human being. It's only thought which says, "I have to go kill that person, I have to go brutalize that person, I need to go take something from that person." It's thought. Thought creates the systems of poor living. Thought creates the systems of disharmony, of violence. And so when you see that, you see it's totally unnecessary. And all the lies and the myths about you needing to, struggle to survive, right? That's all there as a part of enslavement, as a part of the suppression of freedom, as part of the deception, the movement away from truth. But everything comes back to truth. Everything comes from truth. Everything returns to truth. However far anything ever appears to stray from truth, everything comes back to truth. However far anybody or anything appears to stray away from consciousness, it all comes right back to consciousness. It has to. There's no alternative. It has to. Because consciousness is all there is. Even the devil is made of light. Even the devil is made of consciousness. The devil is made of God. You see? Because if you can call the substance something, you say that right there is the fiend. Now, of course, the devil is thought itself. The devil is the ego, the mind, right? Thought that is out of place, that's out of its lane, right? And so it's a metaphor there. But even if you were to point to that, well, the very core of that is still a kernel of light. And it's still in total subservience, even in the appearance of thought being outside of the will and the movement of harmony, of truth, of God, of consciousness. It's still actually in total obedience of that. But insofar as the appearance of anything has to be, it had to go through that disharmony and that violence. You see? Because in consciousness, in truth, nothing's happening. Nothing ever happened. There's only the projection and the appearance of happening. This whole manifest cosmos is a projection of formlessness, you see? And so there's only the appearance of suffering. There's only the appearance of the world. There's only the appearance of happiness. There's only the appearance of pleasure. Only the appearance of pain. Appearance, the appearance of gain, the appearance of loss. It's all appearance. But when that's seen, it's not a justification for the continuity of violence and wretchedness. You see, when you see it, it brings an end to suffering, you see? And therefore there's thought, and therefore the perception of thought as it is, learning about thought, and therefore in that learning there's transformation. So, you see, seeing what is the way it is never a justification or a rationalization for anything. It's just you see what it is. And that is a returning home. It's a returning to the harmonious flow of everything. And so it's never complacency, ever. It's not complacency. It's a total stillness which is totally dynamic and alive, active in its stillness. And true action, true activity comes forth from this stillness, as opposed to the contrived activity of thought, unaware of itself. You see? And this is natural. This has to happen. This what I'm describing, this awareness, being the very state of consciousness itself, however far any human being with the conditioned brain seems to stray from that awareness, must eventually come back home to this awareness, which is a total sharpening of the intellect. Coming home to consciousness and going beyond thought is a total sharpening of the intellect. It's a putting of everything in its right place. It's the very direct knowing of desirelessness, of total self-fulfillment, now, in this moment. And then when desire arises, which it will, it has to, you then see it for what it is. And the very capacity to simply sit still and let the object of desire burn in the fire of desire, then legitimate desire, or that which is both want and need simultaneously, because true need is true want. True want is true need, right? When want and need appear different, then there's a division. But when the body, in conditioning, when the body is hungry and wants food, that's usually just the conditioning, being accustomed to eating more than it needs, and the bad bacteria and the parasites and whatever that are in the gut tricking the gut into trying to give it sugar and give it all kinds of stuff that it doesn't need and doesn't want, because you're not actually feeding the body, you're feeding, the things that you're hosting, right? But the reality is that the true desire of the body for food is in pure accordance with the need of the body for food. You see? So true want and true need are really the same thing. When want and need appear, diverged like that, then you know that thought is there, right? And that's not to condemn it. It's not saying it's not a condemnation or a judgment of it. It's simply you observe, and then you have the capacity to simply sit here in awareness of desirelessness, so that when desire appears to arise within that great field of desirelessness, you can simply stay right here and stay true to desirelessness, which is the nature of your being anyway. And that refines desire. Because if you just simply sit here anyway, without moving indefinitely in desirelessness, that'll only go for so long until the body drops because it hasn't been fed, right? And let's not go into, I don't want to put a lot of ideas in your head of anything that you haven't perceived directly for yourself, but yes, it is possible for the body to go for quite some time, without being physically refueled. And without saying anything more about it, if the body simply sits permanently, right, in one spot for a certain amount. One, somebody's going to come along eventually and move you, right? If you don't keel over from no water and no food. And so this isn't about artificially suppressing desire and saying, I will sit here with no desire, even if desire. No, desirelessness is the natural state of your being. You don't have to do anything about it. Desire arises from thought. And that desire is part of bodily awareness, which is a part of thought and memory. And so the body needs food, right? The body needs water. It needs shelter. It has certain needs, the body. And thought is there as a tool to navigate that, to help achieve that optimally. But so much of what is thought to be a necessity or a need or a true desire, an actual desire of the body, is really just the product of the conditioning, the social conditioning of thought, or the antisocial conditioning of thought. Doesn't matter, it's the conditioning of thought. So to return to to awareness of the unconditioned nature of things, the unconditioned state of things, the unconditioned awareness, is to simply allow yourself to sit here no matter what arises and just let it burn. And then you see clearly, after you let everything burn to the ground, everything, your image of yourself, your image of who you are, your image of your personality, your image of your likes and your image of your likes and dislikes, your image of your pleasures, your image of your pains, your image of everything. When you let your image of everything burn to the ground completely, then you're left with what is the way it is. And then when you're hungry, eat. And you'll be very clear and very aware of what is actually nourishing the form and what is just bringing disharmony to it. You become completely aware you are aware of what you're already aware. You just deny it to yourself, but you allow yourself to rest, to be in the awareness of that which is actually in harmony and that which is actually in disharmony, without blurring the lines. The line between harmony and disharmony is very clear, but thought will blur it and then say, oh, it's blurry, I don't know. You know, that's thought. Thought plays that trick. And then it's not about judging, you know. You eat some sugar. You know, it's not judging, it's just, okay, sit with it. How does it feel? Do you like it? You know what I mean? Like, is it helping you at all? Does it enable you to fly and to soar and to do what you actually want to do, right? When you're doing what you actually want to do, when you're on a straightforward trajectory, when you're doing what you actually want to do, you only want things in your life that support that. You don't want things that are trying to suck you back into gravity, right? You only want that which allows you to fly and soar, which best enables you to fly. Because you see, the very nature of your being is soaring, is flying, is floating. And you're here to fly, you're here to reach apex, and you're here to go. And, and the body will eventually die. Everything that's physical will come to its end. But the learning that is constantly taking place is constantly re-updating the system, so that even as physical form is transitioning, physical form is just transitioning in order to properly meet the needs of the ever-learning, ever-transforming, you can call it non-physical or very subtly physical, underpinning of everything, the actual seat of learning and transformation, which the physical is just a veil over, a cover over, a metaphor for, if you want to put it literarily. But so you see clearly, I don't want anything that adds extra weight to me. I don't want anything that pulls me down. Because I know what that is to be down. You know what it is. You only want that which supports you in your floating, in your flying, in your soaring. Because that's the most beautiful thing, is to simply be here in weightlessness. It's the most beautiful thing. There's nothing more beautiful. To be here in weightlessness is to be here purely with God, with consciousness, as consciousness itself, in total raw communion with your true self, with the source of creation, which tastes infinitely better than anything. It tastes better than anything that the conditioned mind wants to run after and grab. It tastes better than any food. It tastes better than any desired sexual partner. It tastes better than any experience the mind thinks it wants. And again, not to put down any of those things. Those things will obviously be, right? Food will be. There may be a partner, there may not be a partner. But it must all serve the floating. It must all serve the flying. You see? If the food is just dragging the body down, then you, anyway, when you see that what I want is to fly, what I want is to float, what I want is to be here in total optimal harmony with the source of creation, and to know that and to embody that completely and fully, you could say to experience it fully without seamlessly, then you see that I actually don't want what anchors me down. I actually don't want what drags me down below. I only want, I want to float, and only what I have with me, only what I want, all that I want is that which supports the trajectory, that which supports the flying, the soaring, the floating. You see? And so any kind of food or any kind of partner or any kind of people or friends or situations or whatever it is that is not in total harmonious support of that, you don't want it. And so that means it's a constant process of optimization. It's not like one and done, okay, I did it yesterday. No. It's always on, always on, always on, always on, always on. You're always removing the excess, always removing the excess, always removing the excess. You know, it's constant learning, constant transformation, constant growth, constant optimization. Boom, 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 until the body drops. You know what I mean? That's the whole purpose of the body appearing here. It's an instrument of the optimization. And the beauty of this reality is it's multidimensional. And so everything that is actually in harmony with everything else serves a multidimensional function. And so being in this place of, like, you know, constant learning, constant growth, constant transformation, optimization is literally the way to experience and express the greatest joy of being. You see? And so it's like, when you're on, you're on. When the multidimensional being is on and operating, it's working in all dimensions at once. And when it's not, it's working in like one, maybe two dimensions at once. And that feels like sluggish, disharmonious, stagnant, just, right? And so, but when you're here and you're on and you're on and you're on, it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? It's just like, ow, you're here. And everything is doing what it needs to be doing at once. Ow! You know, it's just like, whoo! And because you're here to enjoy, you're here to be, you know, and you can be embodied with it because you're totally at ease with yourself. And it means being at ease with the body. You know? And so, forgive me, but I'm allowing the energy to express, and the body can be at total ease and then total stillness, you know, with itself. And you don't have to speak. You don't have to move. You can just sit here and be, and know that everything is moving and everything is taking care of itself, because the soul is the doer. God is the doer, taking care of everything. The body is an instrument. And when the body moves, it can really, really move. It can really, 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 really move. And it can move in harmony with itself and in harmony with everything. And that means there's total acceptance of the body, which means you're not sitting here dividing. Right? If you're afraid of your own body, if you're afraid of moving a certain way, if you're afraid of being organic and raw and natural, then there's no, you know, it's just sad, it's depressing, it's, which is disharmonious, and that's how you know when you're living in depression, that you're out of harmony, you're out of sync, you know? When you're in sync with life, you can't, depression's impossible, And it's not a judgment, it's just it's the systems in the system, or the systems, it's the signals in the system going, hey, let's look at this, hey, let's, because when the mind is in depression, that means that something's being missed, something's being overlooked, something's being neglected, ignored. And then there's the capacity to return to the true self, which is in total self-surrender. And so as learning is happening, and you, so what do you do about thought, as it arises? You surrender it to the source, you surrender it, you sacrifice yourself to yourself. And so the minute you have a thought of yourself, an idea of yourself, an image of yourself, which can never ever come to even close to matching, to being on the same level as the majesty of what you are, you just let it go. You let it go. You just, because you see it's not true. And so thought is there as a tool of survival. It's not there to tell you what you are or what or who anybody is. That's consciousness. Consciousness in the raw is what you are and is what everything is. You don't need to have a thought or an image about it. And insofar as you are going to have thoughts and images about it, they better serve. And the minute that your thoughts of yourself don't serve, the minute that your thoughts of anything don't serve, and they start to pull you down and weigh you down, that's when you gotta, cut them, let them go, surrender them back to the void, back to the source. You see? Because this is what the human system is designed to do. This is what life is designed to do. It's designed to soar. It's designed to fly. It's designed to keep evolving and evolving and evolving, optimizing and optimizing and optimizing. And so, and the awareness of that, the very book of life is in you. You are the book of life. The very book of the so-called operation of the physical is literally written in you. It's in you. And you either have the sense and sensibility to discover it, to find it, to see it, or you don't. And it reveals itself through your conscious attention to your own being, to your own self. And so whoever doesn't find it or can't find it or won't find it isn't fit to find it. You know what I mean? Or isn't... you have to have, because the ability to have the conscious attention and the willingness to put your conscious attention onto yourself wholly and completely in order to see what you are, which you do only when you realize there's inattention, which then results in negligence and violence and suffering and brutality. And so when you sit here and you go, hey, there's suffering here, I'm suffering, I'm hurt, I'm in pain, and I feel wrong, everything feels wrong, it doesn't feel what's and the only way to do that, and you've been looking out at the whole world going, okay, who can I mimic, who can I imitate, who can I follow, who's the example? But then finally you have to go, that's not doing anything. It's just creating more division, more violence, more schism. The only thing to do is to stop and look at myself and see what I actually am. What's the truth in here? What's that which is immutable, unchangeable, eternal, immutable? And then you have to bring your attention to that. And if you don't have the sense to do that, then you get dragged. And you get dragged until finally you realize that you've looked everywhere outside of you, there's nothing there, the only thing left to do is to look inward. And that's where everything is moving toward. That's part of the optimization. You have to look inward. You have to look inward. That's the only way to grow, to move into consciousness. You have to put your attention totally and completely and irrevocably on the self, on yourself, to see what yourself really is. You're never going to find out by looking out there, by taking, some philosophy, by taking some school of thought, by following this one or that one. You have to look within. You have to, because everything is in here. The whole book is in here in a way that's so perfect and so multidimensional and just so, it's better than anything anybody could ever tell you about it. And so, and everybody has the capacity, and the willingness to look within is the willingness to be alone, the willingness to stop needing or wanting validation. Because when you're looking for validation in the outside world, all you're ever going to find is invalidation, Because the very act of seeking validation is saying that I don't have validation, and therefore that's all you're ever going to find. But when you seek validation, who are you seeking it from? Only people who are also seeking validation, which means they have invalidation. And if you can't get validation from someone that doesn't have validation, right? It's like the blind leading the blind. If you're seeking validation in the outside world or from some external source of measurement, then that's literally just, it's like going to someone who hates you and asking them to tell you that they love you and mean it. It's like, what the fuck? You know, it's like, it's not, it's, you know what I mean? Ugh, it's like slitting your own throat and for the hope of, living. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, no, you see what I mean? And so, and then is culturally we try to, justify it and say, well, I need validation, or it's ego, right? And there's nothing wrong with needing It's like, well, they don't have to judge the desire, but you still have to see that it's foolish, which it's not a judgment. We're not condemning it, but you still see it's split-mindedness. It's insane. It's looking literally for the impossible. The only validation is to read the very book that you are, and that's not validation, that's confirmation of the truth, of what's eternal, of the way things are. And you can only find it within, you can only find it in here. And whoever is still trying to find it on the outside, even though there's that appearance of great suffering and pain, that one who is in that state is also one who causes a lot of trouble and harm, And if you're still looking to cause harm and trouble for the sake of trying to get ahead or be better than or get one up on, then you're not mature enough to be able to fly, because you would try fucking with people in the air if you even could get in the air, you see? So, for the ones that are still trying to fuck with other people, they can't get off the ground, Because if you can't not fuck with people on the ground, what the hell are you going to do when you get into the air, where you have to have love, where you have to have, which means discipline, which means you have to be willing to be in harmony with what is. If you're still trying to live in ego, you can't fly. And for good reason, again, because it's not only does ego keep you from being able to fly anyway, from living in that old consciousness, thinking that you're thought, that keeps you from being able to fly anyway, but even if you could fly under those conditions, you would do incredible damage. You see, and so everything that is perfect. It's fucking perfect. The whole design of the manifest cosmos is fucking perfect. It's perfect in every single way. It's its own safeguard, it's its own protection, it's its own, it creates its own gateways and sieves and doorways and portals, and you have to have the requisite intelligence and maturity and consciousness to be able to step through, any one of them. And so, and rightly so. And then, but who gets mad at that? Ego gets mad, because ego wants to be farther ahead than it is. It doesn't actually want to let go of itself to get there, you see, but that's part of the learning of thought, right? And so when you learn about thought, then that gets dropped. So, it's not condemning, and that's not the point. Condemning another is condemning oneself. So it's just, you have to learn, you have to see. And to the extent you don't want to learn, you get dragged. And when you're willing to learn, then you transform. And when you transform, then you elevate and raise up with everything else. And and you can't do it for anybody else as much as you want to, but the one that wants to, again, that's ego, right? Because it wants something from that one. I want that one to come with me because I'm attracted to them, or I love them, or which is, not love, but you say, I want something from that one, I'm really endeared to that one, and I want them to come with me, but it's like, but do they want to come? You know what I mean? Like, that's if we're going to play the game of free choice here, which is, an illusion. But if we're going to play the game of free choice, then you've got to let everybody make their choice, and everybody will come to the awareness of self when they're ready to come to the awareness of self, when they're ready to stop playing the game. You see? Because as long as you're playing the game of the eternal victim, everybody has to pass through being a victim and being a perpetrator, right? Not only in this particular lifetime, but in the schemata of all lifetimes, because everything plays all parts. But as long as somebody has the fixed psychological notion of themselves as the victim of life, that will be that way until they die. I'm just because of what and who I am. I'm the eternal victim of da 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 da. There's an ignorance of the fact that you're also a perpetrator. And so as long as it's like the empath narcissist paradigm. The empath is also a narcissist, and the narcissist is also an empath. You know, it's the same thing. It's like the sub-dom game. You know, if someone who wants to play the game of dom and they think that they're the dom, you know, and the sub wants to play the game of sub and they think that they're the sub, it's like, no. The sub and the dom are playing both parts simultaneously. You know, you could also say that the sub is the true dom and the dom is the true sub. Otherwise, it's rape. You see what I'm saying? Because, do you understand what I'm saying? And so, unless you can face the fact that both parts are playing both parts simultaneously, yin and yang, why do you think there's a white dot in the black side and a black dot on the white side? People go, well, it's because there's a little bit of good in the bad and a little bit of bad in the good. Wrong, that's not what it means. It means that both sides play both parts simultaneously. Yin is both yin and yang in equal proportion. Yang is both yang and yin in equal proportion. In dynamic movement, as long as there's the appearance of duality, there's the appearance of flux, because there has to be in order for there to be movement. No flux, no movement. But you see, it only looks like one is bigger or greater than another in terms of ratio and proportion if you take a still snapshot of what is actually eternally moving. And so when you take a snapshot in any given moment and say, well, the ratio was 70-30, not anymore. It was in that instant that you took the snapshot, but in reality, it's not. In reality, it's totally equal proportion. Totally equal proportion. And so within you, you are equally masculine and feminine in your energy. The very virtue of you being a physically manifest being means that you are equal proportion masculine and feminine. That's true of everything that's manifest. Everything. Whether you like it or not. And so that's the meaning. And so trying to identify with one or the other in a skewed way, that's you being skewed. And if you identified in a skewed way, then you can't fly, you can't move, you can't be true to what you actually are. You see? And so this is why we say, you know, it's sovereignty, right? Is inwardly standing totally alone. No trying to please any kind of a tradition or any kind of a culture or even a counterculture, right? No trying to please anything. You are sovereign in and of yourself, which means you contain everything. You are everything that is and beyond everything that is. So anything you could say about yourself is lesser than what you actually are. You are infinitely more than you could ever say about yourself. You are infinitely more than anybody could ever say about you. Eternally, infinitely, no matter what. And so to simply be in this raw awareness of what you are is to live without apology. No apology, no explanation, no rationalization. Because you are what you are. And when you know that, you're here, you're aware of yourself as harmony, as love, as peace, as joy, which is not a, peace is not a, oh, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you sit here and you're chill, and you don't have to move, you don't have to do anything. But peace does not mean a suppression of vitality or activity or life. Peace is ecstasy. Peace is vitality. Peace is life. You see? And so the image of peace that we have is not peace. The image of love that we have is not love. The image of life that we have is not life. And so obviously the image of death that we have isn't death. And all of this has to be seen and discovered within oneself. And it's eternal. You can check it again and again and again and again and again. And so you need no opinion. You need no philosophy. You don't need to check for any kind of validation from anybody. You just look. You look, and here it is. Here it is. Here it is. And then you see the difference, the wide chasm between the reality of what you actually are and the cultural conditioning, the social conditioning, in every way. And so you see that what you are is anyway above and beyond the conditioning, and so as long as you are not true to that, you experience suffering. And to be true to what you actually are, above and beyond all conditioning from all places and all times, past, present, future, here you are in true timeless reality, with yourself, eternally. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, and yet everything is done. And you get to enjoy the movement of space-time. You get to enjoy the play. You get to enjoy the awesomeness of being. Which is forgiveness. You know, forgiveness. Forgiveness means releasing the past, the present, and the future all at once. Forgiveness doesn't mean, forgiving another in bits and pieces, or forgiveness means you forgive everything. There's no difference between self and other. As long as you don't forgive one, you don't forgive all. You don't forgive yourself. True forgiveness means everything is released all at once. Now, 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 now. It's not about how you feel. It's not about your emotional orientation towards something. It means everything is released now so that you can be here flying. But that's the nature of your true self anyway. You already are. And so it's just allowing the play, the illusion, to catch up to the reality, which then means the illusion dissolves. There's no need for it. And so then there isn't even a need to even talk about such things, because you're just here. There's no need to go back to the past. And if the past arises, you look at it, you see what it is. It's thought doing what it does. Let it go. Release it. Not out of some ideology about I've got to release it. No, it's because the joy of being, the joy of flying, the joy of soaring, the joy of being here in presence, in truth, as what you really are, is infinitely better than anything else. Nothing compares, and anything that gets in the way, you just don't want it. You don't want it. Why would you? It's not about having some idea about this is bad and that. No, it's just like, bruh, I don't, get out of my way. And then you can grapple with anything, because you can let go of anything at any time. You see? But then you see, you really only want to play with, insofar as others appear, you want to play with others who can play with you at your level. And if you encounter someone who, isn't there yet, it's fine. You don't judge them or condemn them or try to, strut over and above them. No, you meet everybody where they are. And it's like, hey, because you have that strength and that power. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. You can meet everything and everyone right where they are. And if they want to, catch a ride on that download, then they can, and if they don't want to, they don't have to, but the seed's already been planted. You know what I mean? And so when you're here, soaring in the awesomeness of consciousness, then everything and everyone you come into contact with, you already know that there's an exchange. You already know that they're on their way up. It doesn't matter what it looks like. You know what I mean? Because everything's on its way up. Everything, even if it doesn't look like it. And so you don't have to worry about it. You just stay true to truth. You just stay true to beingness. Which you stay vigilant, right? It's like flying. You don't fly with your eyes closed. You stay vigilant. You just watch. Not out of fear, not out of worry. You just keep your eyes open. And who wants to fly will fly, and who wants to stay on the ground will stay on the ground. But even the ones who stay on the ground, eventually they'll have to fly. And they will, And they'll want to. Anyway, they do want to. It's just thought is not reconciled yet. and that space on the surface. So, no judgment, no condemnation, just ease of being. Ease of being, even in the midst of intense activity, ease of being. All right, all right. Breathe in with me, if you would be so kind. Hands on your knees, palms facing upward. Head tilted slightly upward. Deep breath. And release. All the way out. One more time. Thank you for being here. I mean, where else could you be, really? A beautiful teacher and friend of mine has once said, giving thanks, all thanks is redundant. Giving thanks is rather dangerous. It's beautiful. No, I'm not talking about not having gratitude, but it's just the acknowledgement that who am I thanking? Myself? Is my right hand thanking my left hand? But thank you. And never forget that we are one. Forgive yourself, always, 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 always. Which means forgive others too. You can't say, I forgive myself, but I don't forgive you. To let yourself off the hook is to let the whole world off the hook. To throw away the accounting books. Because who the hell are you? As long as you want to hold the world to an accounting, you can't fly. You stay grounded. We're here to fly. We're here to soar. We're here to soar. And in soaring and flying, allowing everybody else to give themselves permission to do it too. Let's keep each other well. Keep ourselves well. I love you. Peace.